The trillion-dollar opportunity, unlocking Black economic power for generational wealth, $1.8 trillion. Dollars. That's not the GDP of a small nation. That's the annual spending power of Black America. Let that sink in for a moment. $1.8 trillion. Dollars. I recently had the privilege of interviewing Dorothy Savoy, whose groundbreaking work in economic empowerment has transformed how we think about building Black wealth in America. Dorothy isn't just an economist, she's a visionary who has dedicated her life to dismantling the invisible barriers that have kept generational wealth out of reach for so many. Her research doesn't just illuminate problems, it illuminates pathways forward with a clarity that's both rare and revolutionary. Dorothy's insights reveal not just the challenges we face, but the extraordinary opportunity before us, an opportunity that doesn't require permission from anyone else to seize. And that's what makes her work so powerful. She doesn't just document disparities, she maps the journey to prosperity with precision and hope. Now, imagine what happens when less than 2% of that massive $1.8 trillion dollars economic force circulates within Black owned businesses. We're talking about trillions flowing out of our communities, building generational wealth for others while our own neighborhoods remain under resourced. It's like having a river of gold flowing through your backyard, but you're only allowed to keep a handful of pebbles. Dorothy's research shows something profound. We already possess the economic power to transform our communities. The question isn't whether we have resources, it's how we direct them. And isn't that a perspective shift worth considering? Think about it. If we redirected just 10% of that $1.8 trillion dollars toward Black owned businesses, we'd inject $180 billion dollars into our communities annually. That's not charity. That's not a handout. That's strategic economic empowerment that builds generational wealth from within. It's like discovering you've had the keys to your own liberation in your pocket all along. But here's where things get uncomfortable. The median wealth of white households in America is 9 times that of Black households. 9 times. This isn't about income alone, it's about assets, ownership, and the ability to pass prosperity forward. As Dorothy Savoy eloquently puts it, wealth isn't just what you earn, it's what you own, what you control, and what you can pass down. I find myself returning to this quote constantly because it so perfectly captures the difference between surviving and thriving. This wealth gap didn't happen by accident. It was engineered through decades, centuries really, of systemic barriers, redlining, discriminatory lending, insurance claim denials after events like the Tulsa massacre, the deliberate destruction of thriving Black economic centers. But here's what Dorothy's work reveals. Understanding this history isn't about dwelling in victimhood. It's about recognizing the intentional strategies that created these disparities so we can implement equally intentional strategies to overcome them. After all, if a system can be designed to exclude, it can be redesigned to include. If wealth can be engineered away from communities, it can be engineered back toward them. Let me share something powerful from Dorothy's research. After desegregation, many once thriving Black business districts experienced devastating capital flight. Places like Tulsa's Greenwood District, once known as Black Wall Street, saw wealth drain away as dollars that once circulated within the community began flowing outward. But today, grassroots movements are reviving Buy Black campaigns with sophisticated digital platforms connecting consumers directly with local brands. When sustained at scale, these efforts transform neighborhoods by keeping dollars circulating locally instead of enriching outside corporations. This isn't just theory, it's happening right now in communities across America. One community organization in Chicago tracked what happened when they encouraged residents to shift just 5% of their spending to Black owned businesses over 6 months. The results? New jobs, created, increased tax revenue for local schools, business owners able to secure loans for expansion using their improved revenue as collateral. Small shifts, enormous impact. It's like watching a garden bloom after years of drought, all because someone finally decided to turn on the water that was there all along. But Dorothy Savoy's insights go deeper than consumer spending. She highlights how generational wealth transfer isn't automatic. It requires proactive planning and community reinvestment. Consider this. In recent years, following legislative changes like the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, some families have leveraged higher estate tax exemptions to pass on assets efficiently. But historically, discriminatory laws made it difficult for many Black families, especially women led households, to retain property across generations. The solution? Financial literacy programs, now teaching about irrevocable trusts and small business stock exclusions. Legal advocacy groups providing pro bono estate planning workshops in underserved communities. The outcomes are transformative. Families who engage in proactive planning secure homes or businesses for heirs without forced sales or excessive taxation, even as policy landscapes shift around them. This matters because generations lost hard earned property through eminent domain seizures or lack of wills. Today's awareness campaigns empower new owners with practical tools previously out of reach. Dorothy's research documents notable increases in intergenerational transfers among participants in these programs. Several small business owners successfully transitioned leadership while preserving family legacies intact. These successes inspire broader adoption and highlight that closing the racial wealth gap requires both knowledge sharing and policy change. The next civil rights frontier, Dorothy says, is wealth transfer. I want to pause here and acknowledge something important. Talking about money can feel uncomfortable. Talking about racial wealth disparities can feel even more uncomfortable. But as Dorothy Savoy reminds us, comfort never created change. The third key insight from Dorothy's work focuses on education as a lever for wealth creation. Research by the Institute for Higher Education Policy shows how intergenerational transfers affect students' ability not just to attend college, but also build future financial stability. The challenge is stark. Students lacking family resources must often work multiple jobs or take on crushing debt just to graduate. But innovative solutions are emerging. Some colleges now partner with nonprofits offering match savings accounts, children's savings accounts, so first generation students can accumulate assets alongside tuition support. The results? Participants show higher graduation rates with less reliance on high interest loans and greater post graduation asset accumulation compared with peers without such support. Traditional metrics often obscure real affordability gaps rooted not just in income, but in inherited assets and debt load. These targeted interventions address this head on by seeding early investment habits. Several pilot programs report significant gains in retention and graduation among low income students who receive asset building supports during their studies. This demonstrates how breaking cycles starts not only at home, but also within institutions willing to innovate around equity gaps. As Dorothy Savoy emphasizes, education without economic strategy perpetuates the illusion of progress while maintaining systemic inequities. So, where do we go from here? What does Dorothy want us to do with these insights? First, Start spending intentionally with purpose in your own community whenever possible. Every dollar is a vote for the kind of world you want to create. Every purchase is a political act, whether we recognize it or not. Second, seek out financial education resources about estate planning, even if you think you don't need them yet. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to preserving what you've built. The time to plan for wealth transfer isn't when you're wealthy, it's now, regardless of where you stand. Third, challenge yourself this month. Redirect at least one regular purchase toward a local or Black owned business, or schedule an appointment with a financial advisor familiar with your lived experience. Small actions compounded over time create massive change. It's the economic equivalent of compound interest, seemingly minor decisions that grow into transformative outcomes over time. I'm reminded of a powerful quote from Madam C.J. Walker, America's first female self made millionaire, who said, "Don't sit down and wait for the opportunities to come. Get up and make them." That's exactly what Dorothy Savoy's work calls us to do. Not to wait for permission, not to wait for perfect conditions, but to recognize the economic power we already possess and deploy it strategically. The wealth gap in America wasn't created overnight and it won't be closed overnight. But every intentional purchase, every estate plan created, every dollar invested in Black owned businesses moves us closer to economic justice. Dorothy's research reveals something both challenging and hopeful. The solutions to generational wealth disparities already exist. The tools are available. The knowledge is accessible. What's required is collective action, millions of individual decisions aligned toward a common goal. When we talk about $1.8 trillion in spending power, we're not just talking about money. We're talking about the power to reshape communities, the power to create jobs, the power to fund schools, the power to build the world we want to see. As Dorothy Savoy reminds us, economic power isn't just about what you can buy, it's about what you can build. The journey toward economic justice requires both individual responsibility and collective action. It requires both short term tactics and long term strategy. It requires both spending differently today and planning differently for tomorrow. But most importantly, it requires believing that change is possible, that the racial wealth gap isn't inevitable or unchangeable. I stand before you today, not just with information, but with an invitation to reimagine what's possible when we align our economic power with our values, an invitation to see your spending not just as consumption, but as creation, an invitation to participate in perhaps the greatest untapped opportunity of our time. $1.8 trillion in spending power. What will you build with your piece of it? This isn't just about economics. This is about liberation. This is about legacy. This is about writing a new story of prosperity that includes everyone who has been systematically written out. The revolution won't be televised, but it will be monetized. The question is, who benefits from that monetization? Will it be the same systems that have extracted wealth from our communities for generations? Or will it be our children, our neighborhoods, our futures? The choice is yours. The power is already in your wallet. The time is now. Thank you.